Welcome back to the New Birth Fitness Podcast. My name is Shal O'Bryen. This is my wife,
Danny.
Today we're going to talk about a topic that a lot of families go through, and this is something that hits home for our family. We're talking about the topic of blending families, whether whichever side had previous kids already, and now you're getting together with somebody who did not share the same kids before.
Mm-hmm.
So what has that experience been like for you, switching from you were married before, having a divorce, to now bringing kids into a different family with me?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think for moms, you're always thinking about your kids and how it can impact them. So for me personally, it was something that I came in with a lot of caution because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't introducing just anybody to my kids. I think that that's something that's very important, just really trying to figure out the person first before you even introduce them to the person that you're seeing. But I think that is something that you don't know, like even from the beginning, how the kids are going to react.
Yeah.
To the new person. You would hope that they would get along and that they would have some common interest and that the person actually is able to bond with them or just really have that chemistry. But it's something that you don't know in the beginning. First coming from safety and then coming to like, I hope that this is going to work. But once we got through that initial phase, and the kids actually got to know you as a person, then it was more like, how do we make sure that they understand that this is a serious relationship?
I remember even earlier on, like us thinking about how should we first meet? Should this interaction be like? You don't want to just be in a setting, you're in an office or you're just in a room when y'all just talking. Oh, this is the person. It's like, okay, how do you make it so that the first interaction is a fun interaction and it doesn't seem like it's so rigid at the same time? So even just thinking about the process of making sure things are in this certain light the best way possible is interesting. Things that you wouldn't typically think about if it wasn't for blending your family. There's a lot of things you can think about ahead of time, like, well, I know this will be a factor. I know that'll be a factor, but there's so many things on top of that that you never would have realized, but it's well worth it.
Yeah, and there's some things that are very important to talk about even before, you decide to step in, like, what kind of role would you play, or what are you expecting? Because I remember for us, we talked about a lot of different things. Like, if you're taking on the kids, what does that mean to you? Or even discipline, because some people might have a completely different way of how they see discipline and how it should happen. And I know that that was something that was it wasn't sticky because we were able to talk about it before, but when we were in the actual situation where now you did have to discipline the boys, and we had always talked about there not being any physical discipline, but even the smaller things. I remember when you were trying to get Sebastian adjusted to, you're gonna do what I say, and if I ask you to do something, that doesn't mean do something else.
Yeah, because you can imagine from my perspective, like, so coming in, like you mentioned, for me, it's like I have to be able to love them like I love you, or there's no point. Like, I'm going in with, I'm gonna love, those are my boys, because if I can't come in like that, then what is the point? There's no way we can really build a bond together when they could feel for me as he don't really care, he don't really. It's automatically going to create confusion.
Yeah, and a lot of times as women or as mothers, we want our significant other to love our kids and see them as their own. But when it comes to all the other things, it's like,
that's the
not
thing.
so much.
And when it comes from a man, a big part of us showing love is discipline. Because it's saying that there needs to be certain rules or structure or boundaries in place. Because if those things are not there, especially we got two boys, those two boys will walk all over you, or it'll create a difference between us even when they hit teenage age. So it's important to establish boundaries and things now. So for me, it's like, look, I got to be able to discipline them just as much as you. Of course, not on the physical side of it, but I got to be able to discipline them just as much as you, or I can't go into it. Because it almost feels like, so this situation over here is going on, I just can't say nothing about it. And then if I say something about it, it's just like, it just gets brushed off. It's like that makes the man feel a certain way. So if you're with a person that came into a blended family, and you're stripping him of the right of having any kind of discipline, you're making that man almost feel like a shell of himself. Like you almost feel like, am I really the head of my house?
Hmm.
Do I really have any say? And when a man feels that way, sometimes it creates more distance because, like, if I'm not really able to do this and really raise my kids, then what's the point of me being here?
Yeah, but it's something that's very real, and it's going to take a couple of,
Mm-hmm.
maybe some disagreements, when
Yep.
it first starts to happen. And we're talking about this because we know that a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
can go through this, and it may feel like, did I make the right decision?
Yep.
Is this something that's going to affect the kids? Are they going to look at things in a different way that's not how I want them to look at it?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of things that we have already been through that we feel like could help, other
Mm-hmm.
people. But even in the beginning, we had already talked about, the discipline and how, you wanted to be seen as, the head of the house, and how you wanted the kids not just to respect you, but to respect
Yeah,
me, and that
100%.
you were gonna, hold them to that. But, and it was almost like a sigh of relief to have somebody on my side, that was helping me to discipline them.
Yep.
Because it may feel a kind of way, for a mom, because you're so used to protecting your children. But when you really think about it, and I remember I would come to these conclusions in my head, like, technically what he said or how he's disciplined is the same way that I would do it. And I would have to just go back to that same, realization,
Yes.
and just say, like,
It's like you agree with it, but
I
it's making
agree,
you
but
internally
because somebody
feel.
else is doing it, then
Yep.
now I feel some kind of
Mm-hmm.
way. Because and even for me, before, I was the main parent
Mm-hmm.
disciplining. So I wasn't used to having somebody else to help me with that.
Yep.
And it was something that I really had to get used to. And it was a rocky point, at the beginning, where I was just like, man, I don't know if I can let go of, this control of me being the only person to discipline. But then I started seeing a change in the boys and how they were, responding to different things,
Mm-hmm.
and just like the level of, respect that they started to have, or just little things that you were showing them. And I feel like as fathers and as men in the household, if you're not teaching, your kids respect, and
Mm-hmm.
you're not teaching them boundaries, and you're not teaching them, how to be helpful, then it's a big waste,
That's literally what I was about to get into because there are certain things coming from the mom standpoint that when you look at a situation like, is that really that big that they're doing right now? That
Mhm.
doesn't really matter. Or certain things don't even notice because you're looking at it from the woman perspective. You're not looking at it like these boys are going to be men later on. And
Mhm.
there's certain things they need to learn that's going to be different from a man perspective when you get older. Like, for example, certain things you might look at as they're cute right now.
Mhm.
All right. And those cute behaviors when a kid is young, like saying certain things out of term, having no structure, or like, wait, this was disrespectful thing to say, or this is the way you don't carry yourself in this situation. But later on to get older, if they're keeping that same pattern, you don't think it's cute anymore.
Yeah, because as a mother raising young boys,
Mm-hmm.
there's certain things that we're not men, we don't think the same way, we don't see things in the same way. But you guys can see how, certain small behaviors are going to hurt them later on when they get older.
For example, simple example, right? And it's, you can say, oh, it's not that big of a deal, right? Let's say, she's got some stuff in her hand. She's got some books or carrying some different things through the door, right? And let's say one of the boys in front of her, they went through the door ahead of her, and she got all these things carrying, about to go through the door, and then one of the boys just let the door shut in her face with all this stuff in her hand. Right. You like, that's a simple thing. Oh, of course the kids, they're not paying attention, whatever. But now you stand at the door with your hands full, but you wouldn't say anything to them after. I'm like, do you see your mom got this stuff in her hand? Shouldn't you want to help your mom? So the
Hmm.
next time, open the door for
Those
her,
are
help
some
her.
things that, really teaching them how to be more considerate. Because
Yep.
I was the
Mm-hmm.
mom that, because I always took care of everything,
Take care
I'm
of it all.
handling it all,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm not asking them for help.
Yep.
to help me with different things, then they were already so used to, oh, my mom's got it handled.
Yep.
Or, like my mom may struggle a little bit, but she's got it.
Yep.
And then,
Those little things like that that go into so many different areas. You think it's just a door, but really you'll see it in this situation over here. You see it in another situation over there, and that doesn't just go away as somebody gets older.
Mhm.
It compounds, gets worse. So even if it's like, hey, we're finished with our food. Here, mom.
Yeah, or
Here's a
there's
napkin. Here's
there's
this.
certain things that they're being, not only are you telling them, but you're showing them, as a role model,
Hmm.
like how things should be done, how I should be treated. And that's something that they really, I think it's very important, when you are blending families, that your kids see how much you love each other and you respect each other,
Yep.
because that's something that you can only model that and hope that they're going to go and later on look for a relationship that resembles love and
Exactly.
respect.
And you're never trying to compete with the
Mhm.
original parent,
Mhm.
right? You're not trying to compete and say, well, I'm trying to take their place,
Mhm.
right? That automatically causes resentment and voids even in itself. Just be who you are and show up in the way you best see it. So anybody coming into a blended family, you have to realize that, from both sides, right? For example, me coming into the situation, I know they already have a certain way of doing things, right? So I'm not trying to replace who used to be there. I'm coming in with the way I do things, but also aware they have already been doing something a certain way for their whole life,
Mhm.
right? So when I look at certain things, I'm like, okay, I can see how that was okay before, but I can see how this is going to be damaging for them later. Hey, let me come in and say this. And there's other things that you might see from them because you've had even more experience than I have with them. So it's like almost a blend of both worlds of you going from your experience of raising them and me coming in from the experience of, hey, I know what it's like to be a man. You don't.
Yeah. And also, I feel like for mothers, we know our kids and we have a certain intuition and we know their
Yeah.
personalities. And I remember certain things, just telling you, like, hey, this is how Nathan operates, or this is how he kind of breaks down things and thinks about them. Or Sebastian, he typically does this,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of things that we have to let you in on about them and like how their mind works and their personality, but also leaving room for
Exactly.
them to, grow and develop in different areas that maybe wouldn't have been developed.
Yep.
So, in a way, there's no right or wrong answer, but in a way, when you're blending families, having a two-parent household, even though it's not their biological father, but them still having a dad, a male figure, is very important,
Mm.
because there's certain things that we may not think of as women or as mothers that we may be robbing them, by not being able to have the male perspective.
Yep.
So that's something that for me, it was, I'm very thankful for that, because there's things that the kids have definitely picked up from you. And there's also things that, I've taught them about, this is Shy's personality.
Mm-hmm.
This is how he goes about things. Or as mothers, we're always trying to protect. So there's certain things that I'll say to them like, hey, you guys know, that Shy doesn't like this.
So what you're saying is like,
So,
as a mother, right, in that situation, sometimes you have to talk to your kids on the side.
mhm,
Sometimes you have to talk to your boyfriend or husband on the side.
mhm,
And it's almost like the mom is the middle person that's in each person's ear so that overall the family stays together. It's the glue. It's the
mhm.
hold everything together. So you can't be in the situation and think it's just going to just naturally work out by itself. There's certain things you can do
Yeah, and you're
to make
planting
it better.
seeds all along the way to make sure that, like you said, both sides are seeing things in the most positive light. So I think it's something that people should definitely consider, when you're making that decision. That is something that could be difficult at first, but I think that it's definitely worth it. And then with that being said, there's all kinds of situations.
Yeah.
There's some families that, they're blending a family, but the other parent is not really involved. In our case, our kids are still involved with their dad, so they get to go with their dad every other weekend. And with that being said,
Yeah, that's another
that's
situation in
another
itself.
situation in
Yeah,
itself. Yeah,
yeah.
because there's certain things, and like I tell my kids, I can't help what happens or what your dad does when you guys are
Hmm.
with him. But when you come back here, you know what are our rules and expectations and how we do things. You know,
Yep.
we have certain schedules. So it's almost like you want to still be able to control that side,
Hmm.
but really
You can't.
it's something that you can't
Yeah.
control, and you have to be okay with, if you know that your kids are in a safe environment.
Yeah, you want them to go spend time with their dad, and there's nothing wrong with that. But also, we realize that there's a lot less boundaries and structure, and you can basically do whatever you want while you're there.
Hmm.
So we realize that that's okay in that environment, but they got to realize when they come back that things are going to be different because, for example, like the experience of you knowing them growing up, there's certain things you're like, okay, this is how they are. But also, they're still young. So, as much as I might know that they're this way, there are certain things about them that, hey, we need to change and work on these things because this is going to hurt them later. Other things is like, this is their personality, and you got to
Hmm.
let that personality flourish. So, when you get back, as much as you might have did this and did that, when you get back here, you know how things are. Just like if you're in a classroom, there's a different kind of structure.
Hmm.
If you're at a job, it's different. So, it's like teaching that just because you do it one way over here doesn't mean it's going to be the same across the board. You have to know how to change and adapt for the situations.
Hmm. There's that fine line of, not being prideful or selfish when it comes to allowing your kids to still spend time with
Yeah.
their other parent. Because in my situation, my kids have a lot of family and they have a lot of cousins, and they're still very close to their family on their dad's side. So it's something that you can't say no, well, because it didn't work out or I don't get along with certain people, I don't want my kids to be around them.
Yep.
It's something that I've definitely had to look at, but I feel like in the long run, I just want to make sure that my kids are happy and that they have, the best chance of things being normal, because there is a lot of co-parents out there, because that's the term when you're helping to raise two kids,
Hmm.
but you're not really together, you're co-parenting. But there's all styles of co-parenting. There's
Yep.
people that, they're still very close, with their ex, and there's people that you only talk about the kids, or there's people that you still hang out or go out to dinner, go to different places together as a family. But the way that we have decided to do it is we only communicate when it comes to the kids, and that's just what we thought was
Yep.
better for our relationship. So there's all kinds of co-parenting.
What would you say when it comes to blending families? What's been the hardest challenge to get past? Is it one of the ones we mentioned already? Or is there another one you think of that was one of the harder challenges for blending a family?
I think the hardest challenge, and I've always said, like, I'm very thankful of how smooth things have gone for us, but I think the hardest challenge was definitely like seeing my kids being, disciplined,
Hmm.
and allowing and giving you the space, to do that. And there was nothing that I necessarily ever disagreed with. It was just that feeling,
Yeah.
you know,
Because
that,
even
that,
that kind of hits different when it's like, you've talked about these things beforehand and
Mhm.
you agreed and you're on the same page. But when you get in a situation, it's different when you're in a situation versus you talking about it before. I do think it's still, you want to talk about the situation before because it still kind of eases it a little bit.
And there's certain things that are not going to prepare you for what comes,
Yeah.
because I know we've had a lot of things that have come up where we've had to parent, and it's like this parenting just got real,
Yeah.
so there's nothing that can really prepare you for certain things that come up, when you're raising kids, that whether that's at school, with the other parent, even with kids that have siblings, because, our kids, they are entertained a lot by each other, and they spend a lot of time together. But with that being said, you know, I know that the way that you connect with each one is different.
Hmm.
Some kids have, hobbies or different things that they like. Or I remember at one point, you were helping Nathan with, working out and getting more fit. So there's certain things that kids, they're just going to connect
Yep.
with. And that's something that I never thought that it was going to be so smooth. So just like there's upsides and there's things that I'm definitely thankful for, there's certain things that have definitely made me very uncomfortable.
Based on that, right? Because I think a lot of moms can relate to not wanting somebody else to discipline their kids,
Hmm.
right? So when another man comes in and they're trying to say, "Hey, do this," right? So that was the worst thing for you, and it's probably the worst thing for a lot of people. What would you say is what's helped you get past it? Like, what's something that you could say to other moms that's helped you get past that situation?
I think what's definitely helped me get past it is looking at it from the perspective of he's only trying to make them better. He's helping me. He's helping me help them. So, regardless of how it may make you feel and, certain triggers that might be there, look at the overall picture. And you definitely have to look at it base by base, because there's there's some people that are trying to blend families, but some people that, they go
I'll
overboard.
say there's definitely extremes to the spectrum for sure.
Yes.
And I've had certain parts where it's like, okay, maybe it's a little bit extreme. For example, me growing up, when you're at dinner time, right, you eat everything that's on your plate, right? So for me, when we're now all sitting together and the boys eat half their plate and then you just want to throw the rest in the trash, I'm like, that's wasteful. You know how many people wish they had the food that you just threw away?
Hmm.
So then you start thinking about, okay, so you're being strict on this, and of course there's some volatility on that because she feels a way about it, and I understand why. So it's now, what can we do so that both sides are still getting their way a
Yeah,
little
for
bit?
me it's more like, when you get the opportunity to parent, you know, and there's certain things that have caused volatility and stress and things for you, why would you repeat those things? You get what I'm saying? So there's certain things that for me, yes, I can see the overall picture and why you wouldn't want to be wasteful, but there I can see the other side too. And even for me personally as well, you know, just that stress of I know that I'm gonna have to eat everything on my
And
plate.
that's where I think there's a happy medium, right? As
Mm-hmm.
much as I might have had volatility from that when I was younger, I also seen how it actually benefited me in other areas by not being wasteful,
Mm-hmm.
always being thoughtful. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't just, hey, I get something and just taken for granted. Just, you know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying? So
Yeah,
I
and
feel
I
like there's
think
both sides of that.
a mother is always gonna try to be more, I think, as nurturers, it's always in us to try to find the happy medium with our
Hmm.
kids. And sometimes, that's a good thing, but sometimes it's not so good
Yep.
because, they have to know that certain things are just the way
Yep.
that they are.
Yep.
So for me, it was like, how can we get to a place where um I'm preparing foods that, okay, maybe the kids don't like to see the vegetables on their plate,
Hmm.
but how can I find a way to put the vegetables in the
There
food
you go.
so now they don't see it
But
and
they still get
now
their nutrition.
we're
Yep.
both not having issues about, the
Hmm.
kids are not eating their vegetable. Well, technically, yes, they are.
Yep.
So I feel like as a mother, and even if you're trying to keep the peace in your home, there's certain things that you're going to maneuver
Hmm.
to make sure that, oh, technically it's not an issue anymore for you
Yep.
because I'm handling it.
Hmm.
I'm making sure that my kids know. And there's certain things that, as mothers, and especially in blended families, you have to move the pieces behind the scene.
Yep. And I,
And that's never from a place of I'm keeping anything from you, because I think that's something that's very important for my kids to know, that you're just as involved with them as I'm involved with them. There's nothing that, I'm keeping from you. Or there's certain situations where I definitely tell them I'm not sure,
hmm
I have to ask Shy, what
Yep.
he thinks about this, because you never want them to feel like we have more control over my mom because technically,
Yep.
she's our mom,
Exactly.
he's not nothing. Oh no, like that's
Exactly, and
not
it's
what we're doing.
always it's picking and choosing your battles in relationships, period, but especially in blended families too. It's not, hey, I'm gonna complain about every situation. I'm gonna point which situations are the most important to you. Okay, hey, I'm gonna give you that one. All right,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna give you this one, and it's a vice versa type thing. And the same thing, if you went over there and know you asked your mom something, right, and she already told you no, don't come ask me too. If she told you no, that is how it goes
Yeah.
because it's so easy, especially in blended families. It's so easy for the kids to try to put the two people
Against each other.
against each other.
Yeah.
So that is the last thing you want to happen. So the way you do that is, hey, you better choose wisely who you ask this question to first, because there might be certain everybody knows when it comes to parents, right? There's something that if they ask you, they got a better chance of getting a yes.
Yeah.
There's certain things that ask me, they got a better chance of getting a
Yeah.
yes. So hey, you pick your poison,
And
right?
I think a lot of it is also like trying to make it as, traditional as it would be
Yep.
if it wasn't a blended
Yeah.
family. Because you don't want them, to say, well, because we were a blended family, then this happened, or my family was just different, or the way that things, because every family is going to have certain
Yeah.
differences, but trying to make it, as normal for them as possible, and we've talked about, just different things, especially when, you want to have more kids,
Mm.
or, how you're going to incorporate that. So for us, it's just been a time for us to really dedicate to the kids that we already have.
It's easier, for things to move on the same accord
Mm-hmm.
when the structure is already in place. And
Mm-hmm.
now it's just you move to the next, you move to
Mm-hmm.
the next, right? And I would say probably one of the more challenging things for me, and once again, a lot of stuff comes down to when you get past challenges, it's like accepting that certain things are how they are.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing you can do about it on certain ones. And then other ones that you can't change, then change those, right?
Mm-hmm.
But one of the harder things for me in the beginning is the fact that technically they're already a certain age. So that means there was already so many interactions that you were not a part of. So when it comes to how they do certain things and the way they respond to certain situations, it's already there.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about that and you're taking that into account, that creates a lot of different situations where it's like, okay, you can't be as strict on that situation because of this. But there's other ones that's like, you still have to change that anyway because it's not good for you. I always told her, even from the beginning, right? They're in a good age where it's not like they were so old that they're already molded to be the people they are. I was like, we never would have worked if they were teenagers, for example. They're already like, you talking about rebellious, like, who are you? You're not my dad to come in thinking you're going to do this and say this to me. Who are you? Right. But when you're already in that younger age, you're under 10, they're still moldable.
Yeah, and there's people that, kudos to you. They definitely do that, and
Mm-hmm.
they're able to blend
Yeah.
families with teenage kids. But it was just something that in the first place, I never saw myself, having to blend my family,
Yeah.
because I was always the type of person that I wanted my family to stay together.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, you have to accept your new realities. So for me, it was like, well, if this is not going to be the case, then I have to make sure that I'm choosing wisely who I'm allowing to be around my kids, and it was something that I didn't really expect. Just like for you, you would also say, I never would have imagined,
So,
being with somebody that already had kids.
mm-hmm.
But I feel like, we've talked a lot about the discipline side of things and how it feels and just bringing the family together. But what about when it comes to the love?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How is that, like for you, how has it been, to take in two boys that technically, you love the mother,
Mm-hmm.
but how has that been for you?
So, I mean, for me, I don't think you can truly like. I'm gonna speak from my perspective,
Mhm.
and honestly, I think that's how a lot of people should view this because I don't think I can truly love you if I don't love the boys as well
Mhm.
because they're literally a piece of you. So if I'm doing things in a way that's showing them I don't love them, I'm actually hurting you at the same time. So when I first come into the situation and say this is the woman I want in my life, I'm already accepting in my head that I love them all.
Mhm.
I have to because that means I'm going to be making certain decisions in a way that actually hurts my family. And if I'm the head of my house, I should be making more decisions to help my family grow and go to the next level than hurting my family. So for me, I would say that wasn't. as hard for me as it
Mhm.
will be for most because I already accepted that before I put myself in the situation.
Mhm.
Now, what I will say is I could love them as much as possible. There's no way I could love them the same that you love them.
Mhm.
They came out of you. You've been with for a long period of time. It's
Mhm.
not a compete. It's not a competition of
Mhm.
who loves more, who loves less. I know you love them more. So
Mhm.
I'm not going to sit up here and say that if we had kids together, that the feeling, that actual feeling
Mhm.
would be slightly different
Mhm.
or even more different. But the main difference is making sure they all still feel the exact same.
Mhm.
You see what I'm saying? So it's not a, that's mainly my point is I love them with my
Mhm.
heart, right? But I know there's no way it can be the exact same as you've been with this kid since they were born,
Yeah. And
you
that's
know?
something that I knew,
Yep.
because even the love that, their dad has for them
Mm-hmm.
is a different kind of love
Yep.
than the love that you have for them.
Yep.
They're both love, but
Yep.
it's a different kind.
Yep.
And for me, that's definitely something that we have talked about of how to make sure that the boys feel like things are
Mm-hmm.
equal, and I feel like that's one of the reasons why we've chosen to really focus, on making sure that they're that they're stable, that they have found, a safe place, and not just with us, but with their extended family.
Yep.
Because
That's big.
I know for my kids, one of the biggest things for them is feeling love from other people,
Mm-hmm.
and, um, they have that love from, your parents, from
And
your family,
And that's a big one. That ruins a
and that's
lot
big.
of blended families in itself
Mm-hmm.
too. When the grandparents on one side they show them hate or show favoritism, that can hurt a lot of family dynamics because you never know it. But blessed on our side that they don't feel any different at my family's house than they do at their family's house.
Mm-hmm.
It feels the same.
Mm-hmm.
My mom, my dad, everybody open
Yeah, and
arms.
they've always been very welcoming, and we've always found a way to, stick together. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's been Thanksgivings, there's been
Yeah,
celebrations, at
everybody's
our
together.
wedding,
No.
and I feel like a lot of the things that we have done has been to try to make things feel and be in the best way
Yeah.
possible. Even when we decided that we were going to get married and have a wedding, we wanted to set a certain kind of example for our kids and that they could see, just all the family coming together. And I feel like that was a really cool experience for them to say, wow, like,
Yeah.
we come from two completely separate different
Yeah.
worlds. Even the side of blending families and being a different race,
Yep,
that's
it's
something
even more. Yeah,
completely, that's another layer.
yeah,
Because you could look at it, and we've definitely had instances
mhm,
where our kids, come and say, hey, well,
yeah,
the kids are saying that,
mhm,
my dad is black and my mom is not, so is he your dad? And
yeah,
kids are always going to talk,
yeah,
and you have to teach your kids, you know how life really works. And that nowadays most kids do come from a blended family
yeah.
or blended in
It's
some kind of
becoming
way.
more of a norm, and here's the thing: as much as there still are differences between black and Hispanic is closer than blended family of black versus white.
Mm-hmm.
So, in certain circumstances, their experience as them growing up in men will be similar to mine anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more of helping them wrap their head around that. Look, there's kids that get adopted. Wait, there's kids that they were brought into the world by this parent, but this parent wants nothing to do with them at all.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're with another family. Who's more important to your life? Who's really your dad in that situation when your real family didn't want you
Yeah,
at
the
all?
person that
But the
raised
person that
you.
raised you is what it's about. So even for us, it's like just helping them wrap their head around, like, hey, we're around you almost every single day of every single week, other than 2 weeks. You go with your dad every other weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, you're with us every single day. So it's not a competition. It's more of helping them wrap their head around and understand that it's not only blood that matters.
Mm-hmm.
It's who's there for you and who cares for you, who loves you, who looks out for you when you're in bad situations. that matters.
Yeah, and you have to look also from the kid's perspective
Mm-hmm.
and how, I've voiced this to you a lot, when you are a family, and I've always been the more disciplinary parent,
Mm-hmm.
but when you are a family that, you have a lot of discipline, you want your kids to do the best, it's not like we're holding them to impossible standards, but for the outside world looking in, they could be like, well, just let them be kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that is something that has kind of been a little bit of a tug of war
Yep.
because, yes, I want them to be kids. And yes, I want them to experience, fun things. And we do things all the time,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
as a family. We've done Thanksgiving, Christmas dinners, made
Different
sure that
vacations, activities.
vacations
Yep.
and all the different things, involving the kids. But there is a time for you to have fun and there's a time for you to be serious. So for me, it's been more like, of course, when they're with that other parent, they're only with them, a couple days out of the month. So of course you're going to go have fun. Of course you're going to go
Yep.
do all these things. And that's great. I love that they get to experience double of that. But it's also like, that parent might not be as disciplinary. So it feels good.
Yep.
Over here, there's not so much structure. And that's something that when you're raising kids, you want to have them, as much as you can. And it's something that's like, it's a very real possibility
Yep.
that when they get older, they can choose and say, well, I want to go with my dad
Mm-hmm.
or I want to stay with you guys. But that's something that I feel like as mothers, and if you're in the situation, or even if you have kids that are old enough to make that decision for themselves, to know that, you did the best you could.
Yep.
Even if you were that parent that was there the most, you have to allow them to experience what it is that they think that they need. And as parents, I feel like the most important thing is, their safety, and to make sure
Yep.
that you have already implanted so many things in them that they can make, certain
And
decisions.
you can't beat yourself up about every little thing because this is a human nature thing, and you'll see it in kids all the time. The parent that's not there the most, a lot of times when they see them, oh my God, I'm so happy to see you. It's amazing. But what happens is when you around somebody all the time, you get used to them.
Mhm.
They, the other parent that's not around all the time, they don't have to get back and let's say you see, oh, you got a bad report at school.
Mhm.
You got this bad grade on this homework assignment. So now you can't just let it slide. You got to have the conversation about it. So you get to have all these, or hey, you didn't clean your room, or different things. You have the more volatile situations that come up that you have to address throughout the week. The other parent doesn't have to worry about that. And when they
Mhm.
get the kids, good spirits, good energy, let's go have fun. So you
Mhm.
got to understand from a kid's perspective, what does that feel like to them? They
Absolutely.
feel like we just had fun here, but during the week we got here. Oh, hey, now you're kind of grounded for this reason here, but now we get to go out dad and go have fun, right? So you got to understand, don't beat yourself up about that. That kind of comes with the territory when you're the parent that's spending the most time. That's how it's
Mhm.
going to be. But those same situations, they look back and love you for later for helping them become the person they're meant to be.
Yeah, like I've definitely talked about that balance with you,
Mm-hmm.
and just making sure that, the kids feel, that fun and
Yeah.
excitement from both
Mm-hmm.
sides, but still, that over here we do things a certain way. For me personally, I've tried to not be as close to, my ex's family, intentionally, because I felt like, that wasn't the best thing for me. But I know a lot of kids, or a lot of blended families, that they still are around, them a lot. And I feel like for me, it was the best decision. But that's not to say that I would ever talk to my kids, bad about anybody, or, definitely. I know when my kids go over to their grandparents' house, I'm always telling them, make sure that, you clean up after yourself, you're respectful, or, I'll just ask them, like, hey, how's your grandparents doing? Just making sure that they feel like this is something that we can talk about openly, and that it's not going to make my parent feel some kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
So just leaving that that door open for them to really talk about anything,
Yep.
and just showing interest, like, oh, you went to, your aunt's house. That's great. What did you do? You got to see, your grandparents, your uncles, your cousins, and just show them that you really still care about that side of them. Not say, hey, you're telling me I don't care about it. Don't talk to me about that.
And that's the thing, when you're coming into it, if you're either about to go into a blended family or you're already in one, the main thing is come in with a blank slate. Like, don't come in with it's got to be this way, it's got to be this way. You have to really come from a place of understanding,
Mm-hmm.
understanding your partner understanding you, and understanding the kids, because there's so many different things going on in that dynamic that if you come in like I'm just going to do it this way, that's automatically creating a lot of volatility and a lot of hurt for the opposite
Yeah,
side.
and I know that there's a lot of things that we've gradually changed,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and we've thought, hey, we're gonna do it this way,
Yep.
and we're like, well,
Yep.
we realize that that is
It's not the way.
not the way, like
Yep.
that's not gonna work.
Mm-hmm.
So you just have to be open to those changes, and like you said, just come in with a blank slate. But overall, knowing that these kids' lives are in your hands, and how you make them feel and how you show that you're supporting them really makes a difference.
Yeah.
So as a mom that is making the decision to even allow for your kids to be around other people,
And then
you
just
know you
saying,
have to you have to think about all those things.
yeah, and just even just saying the changes for me is, good feeling moments
Mhm.
when, let's say, maybe in the morning I'm listening to an audiobook
Mhm.
and they randomly ask me questions. So what about this? What about this? And then later on, I see them implementing some of the things they heard.
Mhm.
Or they come back and, hey, I was talking to somebody at school about this, and this is how I handled the situation. Oh, okay, I see you.
Mhm.
So even just when you get to see their growth and progression and the influence you're having on them, it feels good.
And
To
you
see them
know
grow.
you know that kids, they really love and care about somebody when they're randomly asking for them. Like,
Yeah.
hey, when is he gonna come back from work? Or when is he gonna come back from the gym?
No.
Or are we gonna have dinner together? Or, what are the things? Or just even asking, like, can we go, read a bedtime story? And
Yeah.
there's so many things that we have implemented, like even the bedtime stories
Yep. And actually,
and reading the Bible
that kind of just
together.
yeah, definitely. And that kind of just reminded me too. That's another way, like we talked about, when you bring another person in. A lot of time for women, discipline is a hard thing to kind of the give and pull.
Mm-hmm.
That's a way to kind of gauge it. If the person is being too extreme, or if it's the right amount of discipline, if they're too extreme, you can tell the difference between the kids being scared of the person, right? And now they don't ask for them at all. When you see the next person, it's kind of like, I don't even want to be
Yeah, or they're
around that person.
skittish.
That's a complete difference than, wait. And so even in our conversations, like where she might feel a way about the way I was disciplined on a certain thing. And then later on, I'll be like, do you see how they still came over to show me their artwork? Do you see how they're still coming to me and having good energy? See how they're still laughing even after what just happened? And it makes you realize, wait, is it really as bad as I think?
Mm-mm.
Or am I making it into a much bigger situation than it really
Oh,
is?
it
So
hurts.
then,
Oh, it hurts
yeah,
your, as a mom, it hurts your
yeah,
heart more.
mm-hmm,
It
exactly,
hurts your heart more to see certain things than really what was the
exactly.
effect
So
of
you
it.
got to be honest with the situation. What is the outcome of what's happening? Is it actually getting better or is it getting worse? So when you look at it and say, wait, the kids clearly still have a good time. They clearly still love. Okay, well, maybe I should leave it alone. Maybe I should put my pride to the side. Maybe this is the way we should be
Yeah.
doing things. So you got to
And
be honest about your
even in
circumstance.
traditional families, that are not blended,
Yep,
even in traditional family, you'll find things like, the father and the son,
yep,
not having the best relationship.
yep,
And now you're stuck in the middle. And that's really painful and that's really hurtful. But it just intensifies
yep,
when it's a blended family. So I feel like it's really making a conscious effort to say, how could this make my significant other feel? Whether
mm-hmm,
it's from the mother's side, from the father's, how could it make the kids feel? And, how are they remembering this? Because they have different perspectives that, you know, we may not be thinking about. So I
yep.
think that it's very important, traditional, blended, whatever kind of family that you have, to keep that in mind. But it's ultra sensitive when you are blending families.
And that's what all sides of those relationships matter. So what's the last, like, I guess, piece of advice that you would love to leave with somebody that is in a blended family? Like,
Yeah, I think for the partner, or you as the partner of the person that has decided, to look at your kids as their kids, you know, I feel like one of the most important tips is, never making them feel like, hey, like saying to them, like, hey, you're not the actual dad.
yeah,
Or like, you can't say that to my kids because you're
yeah,
not their real dad.
yeah.
I feel like that is something that can be very hurtful.
That's a lot of seeds to the kids.
And yeah,
Yeah,
definitely never say that in front of the
mm,
kids, but you shouldn't be saying it to your partner. And I feel like there are different times where that is exactly what you want to say.
yeah,
But just keeping that as something that that is not the seed that you want to plant. So just being very mindful of how you're making that other person feel and how you're making your kids feel. Like never saying to them, hey, I mean, that's not your real dad. Why would you,
yeah,
listen to them? Or, never mind them. Because that's everything that you have built up, you can tear down in 1 second. So I feel like that is a very important tip, and for you to slowly be able to switch it in your mind, because I think that it has been a process for me. For me to say I just came in from the start and I was just like, "Oh yeah, he's like their dad, the real No.
yeah.
It was not that kind of thing. It was a process and me learning to accept all of the different things, and even putting myself in my kids' shoes. I think it's very important. So I think that that is, ultimately one of the biggest tips for
You
people.
really want to always show that you're united from your partner,
Mhm.
whether it's blended family or not. You have to be a united front.
Mhm.
Because if you're not a united front, the kids can feel that. They can feel, oh, I can little poke a little bit here. Oh,
Mhm.
I can make this parent feel this way if I do this, and that's gonna come back on the other person. They can feel that.
Mhm.
Kids are master manipulators, right? From young, any kid has that in them. So you just want to make sure that you're saying, hey, we're a team. We're a team no matter what's going on, but we're here for you and with you as well.
Mhm.
I think it's very important.
Yep.
If you're thinking about going into a blended family, I would say there's been a lot of benefits for us,
Mhm.
right? Has there been the difficulties and ups and downs? Yes. The main thing I would say is you got to really be honest with yourself and say, am I up for this task? Am I going to really be here up for this task? Am I willing to really count the cost of all the pieces in the mix? If you feel like, I don't know if I really want to do this, it's better not to,
Mhm.
because it's only going to create more damage for the mom. It's going to create more damage for the kids. You got to really be in it all the way or not in it at all. That's what I would
I
say.
agree.
Be all in or not at all, because you're really honestly doing them a favor and yourself by not starting it if you're not going to really go for it on it fully. So, on this podcast, we're all about empowering moms to transform lives and change the world. Be back again before you know it, the Bird Fitness family.
See you next time.
See ya.